Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the Cafe War here in New York City. As you know, here on the Pace Report, I like to reach out and expose artists that are part of the great American idiom of great American roots music by way of the blues, jazz, as well as R&B and soul and gospel. And tonight, I'm going to introduce you to a young gentleman who has really carried out the great lineage of Southern soul vocalists by way of guys like Joe Tex, Solomon Burke, Wilson Pickett, just to name an endless few. Brian Owens hails from Ferguson, Missouri, and this gentleman has released two dynamic projects. One, he has a tribute record, an untraditional tribute record titled Soul of Cash, which pays homage to one of his musical heroes, Johnny Cash, as well as he has an album which is also available on his website as well as Amazon called Brian Owens and the Deacons of Soul, The Soul of Ferguson. Now, the album is mixed with love songs as well as songs of consciousness. Tonight, he's going to be performing selections with a stripped down band performing the raw and gritty songs of Mr. Johnny Cash, as well as some other soul classics. I had a chance to sit down to break bread with Brian earlier to talk about his origins growing up in Ferguson, Missouri, also talk about the importance and the legacy of Johnny Cash, as well as talk about some of the most important parts of Southern soul. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the sounds of Mr. Brian Owens live performing music, selections from The Soul of Cash, here at the Cafe Was, part of the Pace Report, here in New York City.
Love is a burning thing. It makes fiery. Bound by wild desire, I fell into a ring of fire. I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down and the flames went higher and it burns. Ring of fire. Oh, your ring of fire. The taste of love is sweet. When hearts like ours meet, I fell for you like a child. Oh, 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 oh. The fire went wild
this has been a crazy year for you.
And it's not over. It's not over.
Congratulations on a lot of. First of all, let's go into the Soul of Cash recording. And I used to be a country western disc jockey when I was in college, and Johnny Cash had a very unique way of telling a story.
Absolutely.
Very, very soulful. And then what you're doing is you're going against the grain. This isn't your typical tribute record.
Right. Well, I didn't even really look at it necessarily as a tribute record. More so just a reinterpretation. Like people may say it's semantics, but like it was literally um, treating Johnny Cash's music as if it were just American popular song, which to me, it's up there with any other music that we consider a part of the American songbook. Harold Arlen, all those kinds of great tunes that like Ella and Sarah Vaughan and Sinatra and Nat King Cole did. Like I looked at his music as the same way and kind of took the same approach that they would to that music to the Johnny Cash catalog.
And it's interesting because, I was listening to Soundcheck. Chris Christopherson became a very iconic songwriter in a sense with that was one of his very first
Oh
and
yeah.
early hits, Sunday Money Coming Down.
Yeah, I love that tune, and I think what I love about the music so much is that it's universal, right? It's like really talking about just humanity, whether it's Ring of Fire and you're talking about being in love, or Walk the Line, being in love, or a lot of the gospel stuff that he did. I mean, it's all coming from generally the same place, right? It's a soul thing. So like to me, it kind of breaks beyond this idea of soul as a genre and more as a method and a mode of interpretation. So that's why you talk about Chris Christopherson, man. I mean, like his lyricism is ridiculous, but that song is like my dad's story.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Explain.
Sonny, well, my father, before he became a preacher and an elder and a husband and a father, was an alcoholic. So Sunday morning coming down, that's legit. For him. So just like again, just the universality of the music and the humanity that they had and the way that they wrote that could speak to everybody. Man in Black. I mean that I agree with every line and identify with every line of that song.
What's crazy about Sunday Morning Coming Down and also Boy Named Sue. It was like he lived those lyrics. It's like when you hear him sing those songs and how you actually you reinterpreted and brought it down to Soulsville with this. It seems like that song is very, very universal. Everybody's had a Sunday Monday Coming Down.
Yeah. Well, everybody's had a Sunday morning coming down. And like you say, we keep going back to this same thing of these being universal themes, these and the way that he um, interprets and presents the music is so honest and earthy, which is in the same way that Sam Cooke or Otis Redding, like the way that they presented music was from a place within. It was from a different um, a different framework, right? Which for me, which for a lot most of these guys was coming out of church, right? Where honesty, singing with honesty and integrity is important because it's about the lyric and it's about the message. So you become a slave to the song, and I think that's what I love about all these cats, man. Like they weren't a slave to their talent.
We're going to get into the soul of you in a minute because I mean you really go back to those great, great soul singers of the '60s and listening to this record and also listening to Deacons of Soul because you have two records that you dropped this year. It seems like you're going back to the great soul singers that infused country with rhythm and blues. Guys like Joe Simon, Solomon Burke,
Joe Tex.
Joe Tex. Yeah, I mean, you really, and this is really good because people really need to go back and re examine some of the stuff that we're talking about.
Absolutely. I think one of the mistakes we make a lot of times, especially as African American artists, is that we don't know the history. Like we constantly are looking at carbon copies, and we're not going back and looking at the blueprints. And that's what with this record, and the other records that I've done, like really get into the aesthetics of these guys who were absolutely phenomenal and upon whose shoulders we stand when it comes to performance and singing and writing and all different areas of being a musician and being an artist. And I think it's important um, to keep those aesthetics alive, to keep those aesthetics going. We do it in every other genre. Country music, you know, now the big thing in country is people who actually sound like country artists.
Now.
Now, right, and not like pop artists, like whether it's Chris Stapleton or Sturgill Simpson. I mean, you have people who want humanity back in music. I think because with all the digital sounds and all the auto tuning and different things like that, I think there's a certain amount of humanity that's lost in music that's just for entertainment. But now you got people coming out with music that doesn't have all that stuff, and it's very human and it's very approachable. And I think that's appealing to people.
There's an irony. I always say this: you should always give a man his roses while he's living. And there was a gentleman by the name of Rick Rubin, American Records, who, when the American country establishment spit on and threw Johnny Cash out,
He picked them up.
he picked him up, and guess what? He had the last laugh towards the last 5 records. He recorded a gospel record, and he recorded 4 iconic records before he died.
Yeah, and I mean, and introduced him to a whole like this young audience that like, and I remember seeing like documentaries and stuff where like those shows that Johnny Cash was doing was him and his guitar on a stage, and drop dead silence because people clamor, people want honesty, they want humanity, and no matter how far we get in our ability to create technology and to do all these kinds of things in the studio, which I love modern technology, but I think we have to use it as a tool and not be a slave to it, especially when we're creating art and art with the intent of being human and being approachable.
Well, I woke up Sunday morning with no way to hold my head that didn't hurt. And the beer I had for breakfast wasn't bad, so I had one more for dessert. Then I stumbled in my closet, threw my clothes and found my cleanest dirty shirt. And I washed my face and combed my hair and stumbled down the stairs to meet the day. Well, I smoked my mind the night before with cigarettes and songs I've been picking. And I lit my first and watched a small kid playing with a can that he was kicking. Then I walked across the street, caught the Sunday smell of someone frying chicken. Lord, it took me back to something that I lost somewhere, somehow along the way. Hey. On a Sunday morning sidewalk, wishing Lord I was stoned. Sunday morning, 'cause there's something about Sunday makes a body feel alone. Sunday morning, yeah, there's nothing short of dying. Sunday mornings, heaven's lonesome as the sound. Sunday morning, of a sleeping city sidewalk. Sunday morning coming down. Sunday morning coming down. In the park I saw a daddy with a laughing little girl, and he was swinging. And I stopped beside a Sunday school, listened to the songs they were singing. Then I headed down the street, and somewhere far away a lonely bell was ringing. Oh, and it echoed through the campus like the disappearing dreams of yesterday. Hey, hey, hey. On a Sunday morning sidewalk, wishing Lord that I was strong. Yeah. 'Cause there's something about a Sunday Sunday morning, of a sleeping city sidewalk. Sunday morning coming down. 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 Ooh, Sunday morning coming down.
You know, one more thing about Johnny Cash, and God rest his soul, Glenn Campbell, who we lost here a
Oh
couple
yeah,
of
that's a bad boy.
bad. Those two guys I just named had two of the highest rated television shows in the country. Every week, people, black, white, Hispanic, Jewish, Gentile, sat down and watched Johnny Cash's and Glenn Campbell's television show.
Yeah, and the cool thing about especially like the Johnny Cash show, like he had people like Ray Charles on there, you know, um, and I think that the a lot of the barriers that are constructed by society or constructed by industry are myths. You know what I'm saying? Like we allow myths and lies to become barriers and boundaries when the truth is they only exist in our heart. Like they don't really exist. They don't really exist, right? The barrier between two individuals is you know easy to break down because there's nothing physically keeping you apart. And I think that the way in which especially Johnny spoke to the music of Ray and his Ray's country album and what he did for country music. I think that's important. And like just as like it's important, I feel for me to respect and give honor to the fact that Johnny Cash had an influence on me as a writer and as a vocalist and as a musician, right? And it doesn't matter that he was a white guy from Arkansas
And
or that I'm a black guy from St. Louis. That really is irrelevant because music doesn't exist in those boxes.
this album that you have, and when I got this record, it took me three listens to really say, okay, because what was really hard for me getting through your album, and I love this record, I love both your records, was that it took me a while to digest the fact that soul music never left. But two, you're adding your generation and your take on a lot of things because there's some social songs on here and there's a lot of love songs on this record. And tell everybody basically where the Deacons of Soul is going. And also, did Curtis Mayfield and Marvin Gaye have a lot to do with this too?
Oh, of course. You know what I'm saying? Like I view like if my voice was a palette. So painters have a palette where they put all their colors. And vocally, I have a palette. And I have a Marvin color, I have a Curtis color, I have a Otis color, I have a Donnie color, I have a Johnny color. I have all these different colors. Nat color, Sam color. My father is a color. I have all these different colors that have influenced what goes on the canvas. Now, what goes on the canvas is original, but those colors are constant and they're standard. Like blue is blue, black is black. And so in intermixing them, I get to discover within my own canvas of my voice, you know, what what it sounds like, right? And that's the coolest part for me. So like I think with the Deacons and like with the soul music and just the direction that we're going in right now, um I think it's really important to keep it going, to keep the soul music going, traditional soul music that uses traditional aesthetics, and at the same time, do it in a way that still lends itself to being contemporary.
Because I know the first four songs are charged with consciousness, and then the other side is about love. And
Right.
I'm just really disappointed in the way rhythm and blues has gone, because I mean the Isleys and Curtis and even Teddy Riley when he was with Guy, the love songs, Keep Sweat. I came of that era. It seems like songs of love and romance have fallen by the wayside.
But we got to bring them back, right? That's just an opportunity to sing about love, real love that doesn't leave, but love that stays. Just to sing about that kind of stuff. Love of your children, love like grandma's hands.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I think if there was ever a time to do it, now's the time to sing about it. Absolutely, for sure.
10 years ago, on a cool, dark night, someone was killed near the town hall light. There were two at the scene, but they all did agree that the slayer who read looked a lot like me. She walks these hills in a long black veil. She visits my grave when the night winds away. Nobody knows, nobody sees, nobody knows but me. Well, the judge said, son, what is your alibi? For if you were somewhere else, then you won't have to die. Well, I spoke not a word, though it meant my life. I had been in the arms of my best friend's wife, and she walks these hills in a long black veil. She visits my grave when the night winds away. Nobody knows, no, nobody sees, nobody knows but me. The scaffold was high and eternity near. She stood in the crowd, shed not a tear. Sometimes at night, when the cold wind moans in a long black veil, she cried the earth of my bones, and she walks these hills in a long black veil. She visits my grave when the night winds away. Nobody knows, Lord, nobody sees, nobody knows but me. Oh, nobody knows, nobody sees, nobody knows but me. Oh, nobody knows but me. Nobody knows but me. Nobody knows.
Tell me how the Deacons and Soul got together, and what was your blueprint of putting this band together?
I mean, I've known a lot of the guys over the years, especially my guitar player Sean. But it was kind of just like putting the guys together and then being what our strength was. We all come from a traditional gospel background, so it makes sense for us to use that in the music and use that in the vibe of what we're doing. So that's what we did, man.
You have a song which was released earlier this year, which was on this record, the duet with Michael McDonald, who happens to be by way of your hometown, Ferguson. How did that come about? And how shocked were you when he decided that he wanted to do a duet with you for this?
I was absolutely shocked. Divine Providence, man. It's how we met. I ended up opening for him in St. Louis, then ended up going on tour with him, doing a couple shows. He heard the song while we were on tour and was like, "Yo, I'd love to do something with that." And about 6 months later, you know what I'm saying, I was sending him the track for him to record. So to have him record and record with him is amazing because he's one of my musical heroes, and he still can just kill it, which he did on that track for you. He killed it. So um, it's been a real blessing.
Michael McDonald to Blue Eyed Soul here in America is what Steve Winwood is
Oh
to
yeah,
the
yeah,
UK.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And he's the original, man. He's the original. There's nobody like him. Nobody like him.
You know, you are a minister, and you're also a teacher, and you're also a father. Explain your role as all three of them, but also as it pertains to a musician, and also being a person of color, because 2014 wasn't a beautiful year for Ferguson.
Right. Well, when I think about all those things, I see them in the context of roles that God has given me to play. Right, and there's not one greater than the other. I don't compartmentalize my life and say I'm this over here and this over there and this over here. I never stop being a minister, even when I'm on the stage. Right. It's the stage is just a platform. That's all it is. It's a platform for the ministry that God has given me to speak truth and life into people and into their life. And that's how I see it, man.
You and your father, and this is a very interesting story. You and your father have a song, Change is Gonna Come, a cover of Sam Cooke's Gothic anthem of equality and peace. It is now to the tune of 10 million views. Tell everybody how that came about. And and this has happened within the last couple of weeks that
Yeah,
people are
yeah.
watching this.
I have no idea, brother. Like all I know is a guy named Owen Bucknell, which shout out to Owen Bucknell for posting it. But he took a post of the song "Change Is Gonna Come" that my dad and I had on YouTube, and he put it on his Facebook page, and it just blew up, man. So I don't know what God is doing with it, but a lot of people are responding to it positively. It's touching a lot of people, and we'll just see where it goes from here.
It's very soulful. And it's also something that, people are, the lyrics are very timely now. It's all the things that are happening both here and abroad. And I think you and your father kind of hit a nerve, a real strong nerve right now.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's what makes great songs great, right? They speak to what is true in any generation. And Change Is Gonna Come is definitely one of those songs.
Brian Owens. Brian, I always ask this to all the musicians I profile here on the Pace Report. What does soul music mean to you?
Life. Soul music means life. Because it comes from and reaches into a part of us that we can't see. You know, it's that part of us that doesn't have a color, doesn't have a nationality. Um, the part of us that when we die, lives on. And that's what soul music is to me. It's life, man.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace reporting live here at the Cafe Wa here in New York City. I'd like to personally congratulate and thank the incomparable Brian Owens for his time. Make sure you go out and support both his projects, The Soul of Cash, as well as his album, Brian Owens and the Deacons of Soul, The Soul of Ferguson, which is now available on Purpose Music, as well as you can order it on Amazon.com, as well as Google Play. I'd like to personally thank George and Little John and the staff at Purpose Music. also the staff and management here at the Cafe War for their warm hospitality. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.
Love is a burning thing.